finish to speak, don't rush to go, because Jeremy will come down there to meet with you to have a family photo. Do we believe we are coming from one family? Are you sure? Are you ready to welcome our leader and our next Prime Minister, Jeremy Corbyn?
And Roger, thank you for what you just said, because Roger came back from holiday and came straight here. Thank you for that, Roger. And as a former Islington resident, welcome back. I want to say thank you to all those that are here tonight, because I see many old friends and many new friends all around the park this evening. People that have made enormous sacrifices over many years to stand up for rights, for justice, for their community, and stood up that the rest of us might be able to enjoy those rights. There are people here, for example, who organised in 1977 to oppose the National Front trying to march through Wood Green up to Haringey. There are people here that campaigned against the sus laws, where young black men mainly were indiscriminately being stopped by the police. Some of these issues have not gone away, and I'll come back to that in a moment. What we've got here tonight is an amazing mixture of people from every conceivable community in this borough and in this wonderful city. People coming together because they realise the importance of struggling together to achieve things that benefit all of us. The issues around this election, one are the question of the leadership of the Labour Party, but it's actually wider and more fundamental than that. It's about the way in which we do politics within our society. Last year, we contested the leadership of the Labour Party after Ed Miliband had resigned. I was very upset, as I'm sure everyone here was, by the general election result last May. But you have to ask yourself a question. When we go into an election campaign with many very good things in the manifesto, you can be pleased at the result. But, and there is a big but there was a problem. The problem was that we were not actually challenging the fundamentals of what was going on in Britain, which was the rolling back of the state, the destruction of public services, and the austerity programme being put forward by the government. So it is about opposing the fundamental economic strategy that this government is putting forward. And we're not alone and isolated in doing that. There are many across Europe, across the United States, that all say we've had enough of 40 years of being told that the rolling back of the state, the diminution of the state, the aggrandizement of personal wealth of amazing proportions amongst a small minority, and the growth of poverty at the other end of the scale are somehow or other an economic price worth paying. People have had enough of the politics of inequality and the politics of injustice. They've had enough of the arrogance and the greed of the super rich and the super wealthy that lecture the rest. So when we challenged for the leadership of the party last year, it was about the economic issues, but it was also about the role of politics, the role of politicians, the role of mass movements in our society. Only a few weeks after the election, the Labour Party in Parliament decided it would abstain on the welfare reform bill. That bill was due to take, and indeed took, £12 billion out of the pockets of the very poorest within our society. It was wrong. The party should I've opposed it. It was wrong that we were going into an election pledged to maintain a public sector wage freeze and continue some elements of cuts in public expenditure. We were inheriting and accepting the destruction of so much in our society that had already been done. So we challenged. And many thought it wouldn't be possible. And that mass movement that arose last summer ended up with an amazing result in the leadership election last year, when 280,000 people voted and a 60% majority was achieved. I'm not pretending that the last 10 months has been the easiest of times for anybody, but I say this: if you are to represent people, if you are to have a mass movement, then we have to owe our allegiance to the people and the mass movement and the support of many people who wanted to see politics done very differently. And I'm very grateful to all those that have stood up to be counted over the past few weeks, when much of our media has been united in the view that basically we should shut up and go away because they don't like our voices, and instead we're offering something very, very different. I tell you this: John McDonnell was appointed Shadow Chancellor of the Exchequer straight after the election last year. And I'm very proud of the work that John has done as Shadow Chancellor of the Exchequer. He and his team, it's not about individuals, it's about teams of people, immediately got to work on a different economic strategy. A strategy that invests, a strategy that provides work for all, and a strategy that analyses what government does as it benefits or damages different communities. That surely has to be the right way of doing things. So he looked at the environmental impact of what the government is doing. He looked at the effect on women of what the government is doing. He looked at the effect on black and minority ethnic communities on what the government is doing. And he looks at an economic strategy that is fundamentally wrong and has to be changed. Has to be changed in the direction of investment in public services, investment in education, investment in growing good technology industries, but it's also about investment in future generations. But access to education, access to health, access to work, access to so many community benefits is not the same. If you live in a wealthy area, you will not have had too many cuts in your local government budget. If you live in a poor area, you would have had massive cuts in your local authority budget. You could draw a map of England, put over it a colour, shall we say red, for the poorest areas of the country. You could put large red swathes all over places in England. Many parts of London, Birmingham, Liverpool, Manchester, Bristol, Newcastle, put them there. Then overlay it another map, and you could say colour this one blue, for example. That would be a very good choice. And you could put there the areas that have received the biggest cuts in public expenditure, the biggest attack on their local authority budget. And you know what? The red would be obliterated by the blue. Wouldn't it be nice if we turned it the other way around and the red obliterated the blue? But there are also huge issues about discrimination and racism within our society. I talked about the campaign on the SAS laws all those years ago, but you have to think of where our rights, where our justice, where our achievements come from. Was the slave trade abolished because the House of Commons voted to abolish the slave trade, or was it because of the heroic actions taken by people who were no longer prepared to live under slavery that forced the owners and the whole system to stand up against it? And so ours is also an issue of culture and cultural expression, because we don't live just by economic means alone. We live by our dreams, by our hopes, we live by our artistic endeavour. So I am not ashamed to quote great poets like Maya Angelou or Langston Hughes or so many others. And one of the greatest events to me that I've had the privilege to take part in over the past year has been a discussion about the effects of African literature on Europe and Europe's effects on Africa with the great Ben Okri. To me, those kind of discussions are very, very important. But you then have to look at the reality of life in Britain today. The amount of money spent by major companies on wages as a proportion of their income is reducing. The amount of gross national product goes on wages is reducing. The amount spent on very high executive pay is increasing. The amount spent on dividends is going up, generally speaking. And we have an economy that is imbalanced regionally and imbalanced in so many other ways. And then you start to look at why that is. You look at the way trade union membership has been attacked ever since Margaret Thatcher became Prime Minister in 1979. Then you look at the attacks on the rights at work, workplace rights that are so important, rights to representation that are so important, and a whole big pattern begins to emerge. And then you look at the problems over housing, of health and of education. Why is it that so many black youngsters are stopped on our streets? Why is it that so many black youngsters are underachieving in school when they should not be? They should be getting the same chances and advantages as everybody else. And then you look into other areas on housing, health and so many other issues. So ours is an agenda about equality, ours is an agenda about justice, and ours is an agenda that simply says this to other people that feel uncomfortable with discussing these issues. I simply say this: it is such a crying waste for all of us if somebody lives in a bad place, cannot achieve in school, cannot get to college, cannot get to university, cannot become an architect, a doctor, a nurse, an engineer, or any of those other great professions. We are all the losers because we've lost a great doctor, engineer, nurse, or whatever else. So it is about investment in people, their lives, and all of our communities. And as Roger was pointing out, the growth of racism in our society has dramatically increased since the vote on the European Union. In this very park, straight a week or so after that vote, when the police had told me that hate crime reporting had gone up at least 5-fold in a week, I think there's cause for serious concern within our society. That is reported hate crime. So we have to stand up to ensure that all communities are protected. We also have to quite bluntly say to those that indulge in an orgy of xenophobia, of racist remarks and attacks against minorities, you think you've got a problem over of school places, you think you've got a problem over local work, you think you've got a problem over housing. You may well have. You may well have a problem. You can expend a vast amount of energy abusing your next door neighbour because they're of a different nationality, because their family comes from a different part of the world. And you can create the most horrible atmosphere of hate, prejudice, nastiness and injustice within your community. And you know what? At the end of that, you've built not one house, trained one teacher, employed one nurse, built one school, or anything else. It is so utterly destructive of everything that we stand here together to try to achieve. And so, I want to make it absolutely clear that we will not tolerate any form of anti-Semitism, any form of Islamophobia, any form of racism whatsoever within our society. And if there are concerns about what goes on with any of our organisations, local authorities, our political parties or anything else, we have to be prepared to examine it, to expose it, to face up to it, and to deal with it. I was a great friend of the late Bernie Grant, former leader of Harringay Council and MP. And Sharon, his widow, is here today, and I'm very proud that she's come. Bernie and I were on Harringay Council. We looked at the issues of structural discrimination there and developed policies which gave chances, gave opportunities to everyone else and dealt with those issues. We have to be prepared to do it, not all over again, but keep on doing it all the time. And so there was a time when it was blacks and Irish people that were disgustingly treated. Remember the signs that were up there in the 1960s? It doesn't help if we then start that against some other community. Say the attack on the Muslim community that routinely goes on. You have to bring people and communities together. That has got to be the only way forward. And so what we put forward in this election campaign are two things. One is an economic strategy which is about investing, which is about a growing economy, that is about improving workers' rights and opportunities, that is about investing in young people, not saddling them with 50k and more of debts because they had the temerity to go to university. End the market in education, start the right to education. And it's about dealing with the housing crisis that affects every part of this country, nowhere more so than anyone on average or below average incomes in London. We have to invest in housing, and there's a virtuous circle in doing it. Invest in a lifetime tenancy on a council flat. You've given a family somewhere safe, decent and secure to live. You've given a child the opportunity of growing up, not with the threat of moving every 6 months, leaving their mates and losing school. And you've created jobs in the building industry, jobs in the supply chain. It becomes an economic generator to invest in bricks and mortar rather than a benefit system that subsidises at one level high rents and at the other level low wages. So you deal with these issues by a higher a real living wage of £10 per hour, which is what the TUC figure has been put up. So it is the economic issues, it is the services that we want to deliver. But it's also about the kind of politics and kind of society we want to live in. People in this park have made huge sacrifices over many years to ensure that supplementary schools happen so that children whose first language is not English or the family's first language is not English grow up understanding, yes, the need to learn English, but also the need to retain the understanding and culture and language of where their families come from. It is not a weakness in a society to have bilingual children. It's an incredible plus and strength, and we should be proud of it. But it's also how we do our politics. How we do our politics, is it to be that the views of ordinary people, and we're all ordinary, we're all very normal. In fact, we're so normal, each one of us is totally unique. Unique in our outlook, our ideas and our views, but it's also about how we want to develop politically as a society. Are we to allow a number of very experienced commentators to decide what competence is, what views are, what ideas are, or what pressure is? Or are we to instead say, actually, what's happened over the past year has been totally fascinating. 300,000 people, absolutely of their own volition, not necessarily of identical political views, have joined a political party for a purpose, because they want to see a country that values every one of its citizens. A housing strategy that doesn't allow people to sleep on the streets or railway stations of this country every night. A health service that values mental health as much as physical health and looks at the issues of health discrimination. And they want those things not just for themselves, but for the next generation that comes along. We were told that the new economics of the 1970s, this was Reaganomics, Thatcher economics, in other countries it was known as structure adjustment programs, all of it basically added up to the same thing. The working class have had it too good since the end of the Second World War. Time to take them down a peg or two, reduce and remove their public services, and encourage individualism at the expense of community. Well, I think time has been called on that when you look at the levels of inequality, poverty and injustice that exist, not just within our own country, but other countries. And so this is saying that we approach our politics on the basis that not one person, not one community, not one geographical area of our country should ever be left behind. And you know what? In this campaign, this is the, I think, 21st event we've done so far. The attendance at them is absolutely massive. And I don't invite you to have a free ice cream because there's no free ice creams available. But there is the love of each other available, the understanding of each other, but there's also here an opportunity to democratise our politics. So every one of you here that has brilliant ideas on schools, on housing, on hospitals, on mental health, on cultural expression and values, can be heard, can put those views forward, and can put them forward with confidence that in that strength, in that growing strength, we build a movement that will bring many more people towards us, bring many more people towards the idea we don't have to live in inequality, we don't have to live in injustice, we don't have to live poor lives. Let's together be strong, together be happy, together be united, but above all, together to be respectful of each other. We win people to us when we speak to them with respect, speak to them with a language they understand. That way, we win our justice, we build our strengths, and we win the freedoms for everybody else to enjoy the kind of decent society and standard of living that they all deserve. And we pay great tribute to all those that have made so many sacrifices over the centuries and the decades to bring us to this place. Thank you very much for coming today.
Yes, you can. Yes, we 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 can. Jeremy, 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 Jeremy. Thank you very much for all of you.